Welcome to the Golf Improvement Podcast, episode 130.
Welcome to the podcast for golf lovers and enthusiasts who are looking to take their games to new heights. Dedicated to custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice to improve your golf game. This is the Golf Improvement Podcast with your host, Tony Wright.
Hello, this is Tony Wright from Game Improvement Golf in Oak Ridge, Tennessee with the Golf Improvement Podcast, dedicated to sharing useful information on true custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice techniques. I create exceptional golf clubs. You shoot lower scores. This is the third interview I've done with Bruce Rearick from Burnt Edges Consulting. Bruce thinks deep thoughts about putter fitting, and it was fun to let him share many of them about a topic you might not think you should care about: putter hosel designs and putting performance. Stop manipulating the manipulations, burn less edges, and enjoy this fascinating interview with Bruce Rearick.
Taking your game to new heights. www.gameimprovementgolf.com.
Hello, this is Tony Wright with episode 130 of the Golf Improvement Podcast. And, well, I'm smiling because I really had a great about 10-minute discussion before we started with Bruce Rearick from Burnt Edges Consulting. Bruce, if you've listened to my podcast before, thinks pretty deeply about putter fitting and performance. And, you said these words, manipulating your manipulations. I mean, every once in a while, people say something in the midst of just free-forming, right? I mean, we don't want people to manipulate their manipulations, if at all possible. But, it may not be always easy. Well, today we're going to do something I think that's a little bit different than normal. Bruce and I had been talking about some other putter things online, and I looked online and tried to find out if there was any really good documents or discussions on putter hosel designs, and there's very little out there. And I know Bruce thinks a lot about this, so that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about some of the basics and maybe some of the beyond basics of putter hosel designs and what golfers and fitters might want to know related to that. Well, Bruce, there you go. So, but
all right.
Thanks for this, and it's going to be a great time today. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me back, Tony. It's always fun.
Yeah. Well, maybe catch up a little bit. It's been almost 2 years. That's hard to believe to me, too, that we did an interview.
I had to go back and look. I couldn't believe it.
I looked at the date. So talk a little bit about what's been going on in those times, and maybe anything different or things really exciting you. I know you've had some other initiatives, a lot of initiatives going on since then. Right.
Well, in terms of the burnt edges, it's been interesting it's been fun as Tony, as we talked about before. I started doing this a long time ago. And I shared some and didn't share a lot, and started to write a blog and just started to put it out there. Not for any particular reason. I didn't think anybody would be all that interested at first. And the other part was that it's just me, and I'll just share it with the people that I work with, and we'll keep it at that, because you start putting it out in the public, that just gives somebody a reason to drop a hammer on you. So
yeah, there's so much of that.
Yeah. So now, thanks to you and some other things going on, now things are starting to really pick up, and people are calling me and they're questioning stuff, and I started to question myself a little bit. I said, all right, did you really have it? Were you really ready? Did you really have it? So I spent about 4 months this winter going back and re-looking at all my data. And if you think that's a small chore, it took me 4 months. And it just, the 9 profiles, is that what we saw? Yes. Well, the only thing that we changed there is that we know that's probably, the 9 profiles are probably the outer limit for success. You don't want to go too much, exaggerate beyond the 9 profiles. And people can find my 9 profiles on online. Just Google me, you'll see it. So we know that's the outer extremes. You don't want to be too much more than a 2-degree tilt one way or another to really have any consistency at least a high level. The second thing was this conversation that's come up over the last year about, well, the putter doesn't really matter, that it's just this, it can depend on the player. Well, the problem that I found with that is that the studies that were done weren't looking at the same data that I was looking at, weren't looking at the same things that I was looking at. And so I'm still on here telling you that the putter makes a difference. And I've seen nothing or heard anything that changes my mind. And the people that did these studies that have come back at me, I've just asked a couple questions and that ended the conversation. Why didn't you look at this? Why didn't you look at that? And they can't answer that. And I said, well, I think if you do, then you'll have a different opinion of your study. So anyway, that's basically what we're doing right now. I've got 25 Odyssey Stroke Lab putters in my office. I've got almost every combination that they put out, and we're really looking hard at the weight distribution and how that has influenced that. Sean Toulon's been great, and I'm going to be ready to share some things with him about what they've discovered and how they've approached that weight distribution in putting. And I will say that it's a good thing, and it just makes you think more about that specific fit of a putter. So anyway, and then I'm continuing to teach. My stable of players that I consult with is quite a bit larger than it's ever been in the past. So things are going great.
That's good. But it's great. I always remember I used to love reading things about John Wooden, right? And John Wooden every year would create a project where he tried to learn something new, right? No matter what. Right. I mean, as good as he was, I mean, people that are trying to be good try to keep learning. So, I mean, and I shared that thing with the Toulon, that's the link that I'm going to put in the show notes because that's the best visual of the different type of Hosel designs that I've ever seen.
Sure.
There's nothing
and Sean
out
understood
there.
It. All the guys at Odyssey understand it. And it's really, it boils down to, and I don't think I'm going to get in trouble for speaking for Sean in this. It's that business versus artist or engineer discussion that any public company has to have. They understand it. That's why the Toulon Garage is such a great thing because that gives you more flexibility in how you build your putter. But they understand it. It's just how many SKUs you want to put in the line.
Yeah.
And how does a retailer deal with that? I mean, right now, Sean said, what do you need to do what you want to do? And I sent him an order for 54 putters. Well, Bruce, that's probably not feasible, he said. So let's we've worked it down, but it's been great. And it's really fun to all right, this is this profile putter and ask somebody to we just ask them, hook them up to the technology and putt till you make 5 in a row and look at that stroke and see, does it match what we expected?
Yeah.
And we're thrilled with the results. So, it's there. It's, unfortunately, we got a lot of conversations going on and a lot of people have a lot of different reasons for saying what they want to say or doing what they want to do. And so it's confusing, I think, for people. And I certainly understand it. And I certainly wouldn't tell you that there's a best way to get to it anyway. So it's just really a matter of knowledge and understanding and I think it's fun. I think for the average guy, it's just a lot of fun to, how would I do with a plumber's neck? Or how would I do with a flow neck? Or how would I do with a straight shaft into the head? Or, just playing around with that and understanding that. I think that's part of the fun of the game.
Yeah. Well, one of my fitting friends, actually, I catch these little phrases, and one of the notes I saw, he said, my putter has to be a plumber's neck. And I think there's probably a lot of people out there that, I mean, their concept is, if the visual is not right, if I don't love the visual, that, it's not going to work. But I'm not sure. I think we're all smarter than that. A lot of people are smarter than that now too. And so talk a little bit about that. What's the balance between the visual and the performance?
Okay.
Now the performance has to be important, right?
Well, let's start with understanding that the hosel is the delivery system of the head to the ball. Okay, the shaft connects to the head in some manner, and that hosel is how it happens, and it can be bent any number of ways and in any number of directions, and you can have offset or non-offset or onset or whatever it is, but that's the connector. So that's the mechanical aspect of it. Then you have the emotional aspect of it, which is the visual and the preference and look. And so the trick is nobody's going to fight. Nobody's going to say, my tendency might be to tell you that I'm more concerned about the mechanical aspects and you delivering the putter square to the ball than I am how it looks to you. That might be my tendency, but I will be the first to admit that if it doesn't look good, you're not going to use it. So I'm going to lose you. So what I think what you're hearing when I have to have a plumber's neck is that number one, they've either built a stroke that works very well with a plumber's neck. And I will tell you that in all of our studies, the plumber's neck is the one that's most specific, that we see the success in a certain type of stroke and we see all the failures and everything else. It's like it's a one-way street to success. And so we try and, all right, so how does that, and then they develop that, well, it looks good to me because I've been making a lot of putts, so this is the look I've got to have. And so the plumber's neck was it was literally an invention of Karsten Solheim to an engineer's version of getting offset in a putter.
Yeah.
And so that plumber's neck is, so with your friend, and I have to have a plumber's neck, then we would expect to see certain things in his stroke when we measure it. And the plumber's neck has a tendency it's got a left bias, is what I call it. There's a tendency, we see tendencies for players to aim it more left than they would another style. We see tendencies for the putter to work closed to the arc as it goes back in the backswing with a plumber's neck. I think it has something to do with weight. I think it has something to do with how the cup sits relative to the hosel. I think there's any number of reasons, but they've been pretty clear and it's reasonable to expect that little bit of a shut. So if you can imagine, if you can just turn a putter a little bit shut to a line, then if it's going to play shut, then you're probably going to attack it a little bit from the inside.
Yeah.
So that arc's going to tilt to the right. So we see this arc slightly tilted right to accept the fact that it's slightly closed, and that's the stroke that we see. Brooks Koepka, Tiger Woods, wherever you want to go, that's what we're going to find. And I will just throw this in. I think the plumber's neck is the reason that you see the claw grip. Because guys hit it, had an answer or had a Newport or whatever it was, and couldn't keep from hitting it left. And so they blamed their right hand, and they went to the claw grip and repositioned the putter in the claw so that it would sit more square, and then the claw kept it from closing in the backswing, and then they figured out a way to hit it that way. And then almost in every case that we saw the claw with a answer or plumber's neck, we saw them switch putters eventually.
So you've had some people that would quote unquote yip it, and if even if it wasn't a perfect match, that you just get them to center shaft and boom, it changes.
Yeah, any number, or just a change to a flow neck or a little bit of a look. There's a pretty famous player. I always get in trouble when I bring him up, but anyway, pretty famous player that went from plumber's neck to flow neck to then a entirely different design. And he's looking to build the stroke that he wants rather than making the stroke that's most natural to him. That's great. That's the way it should work. But, and he sticks by the rules and he's figured it out. But it started with a left miss with a plumber's neck.
Wow.
And so that's something. So when everybody tells me that they've got to have a plumber's neck and I go, what's your miss? And they go, well, I miss it left. I know I got my work cut out for me because I've got to have that discussion, and I can sit down and show them. Nobody ever wants to see all the data, but I can show them enough data that here's the left.
Yeah.
Tiger's got a left bias in his stroke with a plumber's neck, and he he developed a pattern of stroke that dealt with it. And it just sits that way. And some manufacturers, when you set them down, they look hooked right from the start with a plumber's neck. And it depends. I think it depends on how the cup sits relative to the hosel. Scotty talks about making it at an angle, and some guys make it square. The swag guys are doing a great job of if you're familiar with swag, they're doing a great job of really looking at all that. And the next generation of the answer style putter.
The swag guys, I'm not sure I've heard of them. It's a putter manufacturer.
Oh yeah, they're out of Chicago, and they're doing a good job. One of them, Tyson Lamb does a great job. I can go on forever. Byron did a great job. They all took a look at it and said, basically what they said is, this is what I don't like with the original answer design, and they would modify it slightly to fit what they thought was best.
Yeah.
And so, but it goes back to the hosel. It goes back to, how does that connect? How does it deliver the blow, and how does it look to me? And if you can think on hosels in terms of offset, how much offset, and how it positions the shaft relative to the head, and we call it shaft axis to face. So if you draw a straight line down your shaft and extend that line just extend it out, how far is that line from the leading edge of the putter, and where does it fit relative to heel and toe? And that gives you an idea of what that putter's designed, how that putter's designed to move. Okay. Now, so if the shaft axis is closer to the heel, then that's going to be one where the toe is going to move faster than the heel naturally. So how does that adapt to your arc? Or if it's closer to the center, then the heel and toe are going to move more the same speed. And then how does that adapt to your stroke? How does that work with your stroke?
Yeah, see, you said you wouldn't be able to avoid getting a little deeper into this, and this isn't even close to deep. I know, but that's okay because most people don't hear about this stuff. Now,
well, think about this. Just think about in our discussion today. Think about how much arc do you have in your stroke, and it's easy to find out. You can go almost anywhere anymore. Has got either a blast motion sensor or Capto or Putt Lab or whatever they got, right?
Yeah.
And they can tell you how much arc you've got in your stroke. Okay? So then look at that amount of arc and you go, what putter design will keep that head positioned consistently along that arc so that it won't twist or it won't oscillate or whatever you want to call it? That's what you're looking for basically. So when we're talking about hosel design as it pertains to performance, then we're talking about having that shaft axis and the offset the proper amount for how you swing, how your arc works. That's the basic of it.
Yeah. Now, we talked already a lot about plumber's necks. Any performance differences because there are long plumber's necks,
right?
Short plumber's necks. I mean, what are a little bit of nuances related to those?
That's the shaft axis. So in a short plumber's neck, the shaft axis will move toward the heel. And the way we look at it is what percentage, if I draw a line, if I'm looking at the face of the putter and I draw a line down through the shaft, what percentage of the putter head is on the heel side and what percentage of the putter head is on the toe side? And so you end up with a 50-50 in the center shaft. And so with a plumber's neck, with a standard plumber's neck, it's right around 60-40, right?
Yeah.
40% of the blade is on the heel side and 60% of the blade is on the toe side. And so the longer that neck is, the more vertical it goes up, the more it moves the shaft axis to the center of the putter. So if you want to talk in terms of face balance, the longer the neck, the lesser amount of face balance you will see. The closer you will be to horizontal in the face balance. And if you get over, and if it goes beyond USGA spec, there's a famous story about Scotty building a long neck, plumber's neck for Tiger. And it was too long. And it exceeded the USGA limit. And that putter actually would have balanced toe up, and Tiger won a tournament with it, and they questioned it, and the putter came up missing, and they never got to measure it.
Oh, my gosh.
And so the speculation is that it went off the edge of the boat, but who knows? But yeah, it was too long. It was I can't tell you off the top of my head what the listeners will know, but from there's a length of hosel that can only be there's a limit of how high it can be off the ground.
Well, I know in terms of like double bends and stuff, you can't bend the putter beyond a certain length or something.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing. Yeah. So, and all the plumber's neck was a engineering, like I said, engineering feat of Carson's to say I can build an offset easier this way, cast it easier this way than having the curved neck of an 8802, say.
Yeah.
And so when he discovered that was easier for him to cast, and then they could put the shaft inside the cup as opposed to over the hosel. It was all basically a ease of design or ease of manufacture was a big part of that.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
I gotta get. When you said that, why the difference between long and short plumber's neck, my first reaction was, duh, how come I couldn't figure that out? But nobody talks nobody talks about that. I mean, that's it's a fundamental thing once you think about it.
Well, I think what happens, Tony, is they just look at face balance and they don't really think about how they achieved the face balance.
Yeah.
So you can get right now, I think I've got a list because guys that like that look but we want to move the shaft axis. Yeah. I probably have a list of 8 or 9 different varieties of the same putter with specific hosel lengths, so that if you need, let's say you play close and your eyes are over the ball and you got a more upright arc and you like the look of an answer, but it's too loose. If I play a conventional one, there's too much rotation or too much freedom in the putter, then we'll go to the longer one. And so it might be 30 or 15 or 20 degrees of face balance.
Yeah.
And then I'll have the same guy likes the same look. He's looking for a shorter. Well, but I don't see too many short ones anymore. But they used to be pretty prominent. And so as a custom guy, I've got guys that can, Bruce, I'll cut that neck off and weld it back on, and we'll weld it short, and we'll give him the toe hang or the face balance or the shaft axis or whoever's describing it. We'll give it to him exactly where he wants it. But it's because they prefer that look. They're used to seeing the cup. They're used to seeing that position of that hosel. And so we just literally build the putter, modify the putter neck to get what he needs from a design standpoint.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Well, let's
the Cliff Notes version of that one, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, well, we're going to move on. At least visually, people should be able to accept this one easier, but center shafted putters, right? I mean, I don't think there are many. Are there many center shafted heel center shafted putters out there these days? I don't think
not so much. I think because they put them in, for the most part, they'll build them in mallets.
Yeah.
And when they move that center of gravity down toward the back end of the putter, that pulls that putter to a face balanced position if it's symmetrical. And so that's why you see the face balanced. It's a combination of wanting a mallet and wanting it to be true center shaft, and that's what you end up with is face balanced. But I will say that a straight neck, a straight shaft right to the head, center shafted, is probably the most versatile putter. It's easy to get it closed. It's easy to get it open. It's stable in the hit, but it's not so stable in the swing. And so it accepts the fact that you like to hold the face open a little bit or hold it square and a little open to the path. It also accepts the fact that you might want to rotate the toe into it a little bit. It doesn't fight you however you want to try it. So I always recommend that somebody's really struggling with putters and they call me on the phone. I say, go try a center shaft, a true center shaft, and tell me what you find out. Because that'll tell me a lot about if the guy's calling me from Spain and I'm here in the States, that'll tell me a lot about what the player does in his stroke.
So if he's fighting that, then it'll typically tell you what then?
Well, it'll tell me. Let's say I ask him. I said, "Do you have a big arc or a small arc?" "Oh, I have a big arc." "Okay, and you got a center shafted?" "Yes." "What's your directional? Is the putter arcing is the putter moving with the arc, or are you manipulating the face?" "No, I'm moving with the arc." "Okay, what's your miss?" "Well, I'm missing left." "Well, we know then he's releasing the toe."
Yeah.
Okay. Or if Bruce, I'm blocking it right. "Oh, okay, then we know that you're holding on." So that starts us down the path of what would be if there's a better fit, what would be a better fit. And and sometimes you never go any farther. They find the one that they like. We put a Division I player that had a pretty good sized arc that went left, and a face balance center shafted mallet made all the difference in the world. About 5 strokes gained from one round to the next.
Well, that's the obvious fit. I mean, that's really the obvious fit from it on the basis of your system and stuff. Yeah, we like that. We like that style of putter in anything that arcs left, and in the simplest fit, in what I call the manufacturer's fit, that the player's going to go buy one off the rack. That's the easiest place to put them. Yeah. Well, okay, so the next one, that is slant neck putter hosels, and kind of how did they come about, right? Because you said that the plumber's neck sort of was the beginning, but I mean, was that an obvious transition? And what are the performance characteristics of those?
Well, in the slant neck, it's basically more versatile. There's no difference. There's nothing that the hosel design itself does that would be different than any other combination of offset and shaft axis. But what it does is, for a manufacturer, it's easier to design and build. So I can get the offset that I want by the angle of the slant, and I can get the shaft axis that I want by the length of the hosel. So, it's always surprised me that somebody didn't come out with a putter company that was all slant necks and just a variety of lengths and angles, because you can get every combination. I think it's fair to say that the slant neck has a loyal group of followers, but it's not a huge group, and I think it's because it doesn't look like a plumber's neck, and so. I know the first putter that I ever fooled around with the design, I used a slant neck, just because it was just easier, and it was easier to get. And then I could modify it. I can bend it to make it what I want. And manufacturers don't want to do that. They don't want to give you that option. So
do you think
that's
it's
basically it?
Yeah. Do you think it's kind of because though that there were so much visual look at the plumber's neck that people just were afraid to dive?
Here's my I think where it came from, and I don't know where I saw the first slant neck. I think it might have been a Scotty Cameron, and I think what happened is a player went to let's just say it's Scotty, but a player went to a putter designer and said, I don't particularly care for the look of, I want a hosel. I don't particularly care for the look of the plumber's neck. Is there any way we can modify this? And Scotty came up with, or whoever came up with this slant neck version. And the first one that I ever saw was a slant neck from Cameron that had a full offset. It basically set up just like a plumber's neck. It just had that slightly different look to it. And then, but I think, another real effective one is a slant neck that doesn't have as much offset. Like a half shaft offset with a slant neck is a good one.
Yeah.
But it's more versatile, and it allows for more combinations. And the guys that can customize them, and this has had a big influence on how the manufacturers build putters, is the boutique guys like Byron and Tyson Lamb and all the guys I'm mentioning. They can build it. I can literally call them and say, okay, I need this thing to be 1 3/4 or 2.5 inches or whatever, and give them the exact angles that I'm looking for, and they can build it for me. And it's easier with a slant neck than it would be with a plumber's neck.
Yeah, and they probably just almost cut off the end, right? Because they can make the straight part of it.
Yeah.
Same.
And I think Dave Billings with Machine. I think Dave is, because he's the guy that basically invented the interchangeable neck system. Yeah. And Dave found out pretty early that, boy, I can make all different kinds of lengths here and have a wide variety of custom options. So, and using face balance, again, using the longer the neck, the more likely it is to be face balance. Using that as the sales point, saying, if you want to face balance this model, I put this neck in it. If you want a lot of toe hang, this model, I'll put this neck in it. If you want half shaft offset, we'll use the slant neck because the cup's not sitting on the outside of the hosel. So
yeah,
it's really a lot of the Hosel that we know. It wasn't. They weren't built with the performance features in mind as much as it was design and ease of manufacturing.
Yeah.
And so then as players we adapt, right? Which is what we've always done. Somebody comes out with something new, we try and adapt to what the manufacturer offers us. And then sometimes you get some innovative stuff that helps everybody, but for the most part, it's still the same as when a guy like you was sitting on the first tee in the 1890s building clubs. What do you need? Well, I need a club for hole number 16. Okay, I'll build one for you. And so we haven't moved much from that, really.
Yeah.
It's just that with more options as well.
Yeah. So the next one, I mean, it can look like a slant neck, but flow necks, right? And that's basically just another, it's probably a little more complicated from a manufacturing standpoint now that we're talking about it, but it again gives you all the variability that you talked about. It's just a different look.
It's that different. It's what we found with flow necks, Tony, is they are less likely to sit left. I could give you. Let's take two Newports that everybody knows what we're talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
And I can have Scotty build a flow neck with a full offset that would fit. That would be exactly the same toe hang as the plumber's neck. Okay. But the player would set that plumber's neck down, and he would aim it farther left than he would with a flow neck.
So
almost always.
That's kind of that fits in the sort of Adele, at least for what I remember, the philosophy there with a sort of a softer bend visually tends to keep people from going left, right? Yeah.
And I prefer flow necks just from they're more graceful. I like the word flow because there is a flow to the head. It's not this boom and then a left turn and then boom and a right turn and then into the head. I prefer that. I like longer necks. It's just even from a mechanic, right? There's some preferences. But you can basically build the same thing with a flow neck. If I ever started my putter company and ever had the nerve to do it, they'd probably all be flow necks. Flow necks and a direct attachment. And I think it's more graceful, and I think it's less influential. I have more variety. I can do more with a flow neck with a player than I can with a plumber's neck, going back to that specific stroke. And we've used them a lot. I don't know how many custom putters I've had built for players over the years, but I can tell you that a lot of them were flow necks. And for as many players as I've had, there's been a different variety of each one.
Yeah.
Byron Morgan is an expert at taking a flow neck and bending it to exactly what you need it. And to watch him is just fun. He heats them up red hot, and then he starts working on them with both hands and two bending bars, and he walks away. There it is. And I said, how do you do that? And he said, well, I've done a few. So, but he, that's and the other thing while we're talking about, Tony, is the weight. How much does the Hosel weigh? That has an influence on how fast the toe will close.
Okay.
The heavier the Hosel is, the faster the toe will close, or free up the ability to close it. And so we've wrapped lead tape around the Hosel of a plumber's neck for a guy that hits a push. To give you an example, to give him that feel of letting that weight push that toe close. And going back to, if you don't have the only guys that don't feel a difference are the guys that have a death grip on the putter.
Well, that's an important
If you go in there with soft hands, you're going to feel the difference. If you go in there locked in and holding on and white knuckling it, no, you won't feel the difference. So that was one of my arguments with the guys that says the putters don't matter. The putters matter. It's just how the player reacts to it. And if one thing for sure is if you were to come to see me, the first thing I'm going to look at is your knuckles. If you're squeezing hard enough that the blood has left your knuckles, then I'm going to ask, and then we're going to start talking about, is this the right putter for you? Because I think grip pressure has a lot to do with you having the right Hosel and the right design features. Because if the putter wants to go one way and you want to go another, and you've got a soft grip on it, putter's going to have more influence on and say, I'm going this way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so So you just lock her down and go, okay, I'm not going to let you. It's kind of like a little argument between you and your putter.
Well, the last one then, Bruce, or at least the last one on my list, unless I miss, single and double bend shafts. So, I mean, those are, they're kind of crazy to install to me too, for sometimes when I put them. But what's sort of been obviously can go the same route, do a lot of different things with them, but what's the unique elements of those?
Well, again, it's a manufacturing thing, is that I'm looking for a specific offset. I'm looking for a specific shaft axis to face ratio. And how am I going to get there? And so I can give it a different look. I can do it with a double bend. I can do it with a single bend. I can do it with what angle I bore the hole that the shaft goes in. I can do it by changing the little nub or whatever that is that the shaft goes over, like in the Odyssey putters or some of the Cameron putters. So, like for example, Scotty, instead of drilling a hole in let's use the mallets that Cameron uses that have some toe hang, the 5.5s, the 0.5 part of the series. Okay.
Yeah.
Those are built with a Hosel or a attachment that's coming out at an angle, because I think he found that was easier for him to build it that way, and then attaches the single bend to that to get the proper amount of offset that he was looking for in the putter. So it's a straight one bend to an angled attachment that gives me that. Now in the double bends, what you see is basically the manufacturer drills a vertical hole through the putter. Okay, and so it's a 90 degree, and then the double bend, the bends start to work that shaft to the 70 degree lie angle that they're looking for and the amount of offset that they have. So one bend handles the offset, the second bend handles the face angle. So, and the thing to remember with those is there's no weight in the hosel. So that'll change the feel of the release of the putter through the ball. And it's why when we don't want to release, you'll see more success with a single bend or a double bend and no weight in the hosel, because then there's not the weight in the heel influencing that rotation. So it's easier for me to hold it square.
So then single bend, double bend, and face balance for some of the people that are the out in?
For the most part, but here's what you can do. Like, for example, all right, so let's say you bought a $400 putter that had a double bend shaft that was, hopefully it's a little too long for you, but you don't think you like face balance. Well, the easiest thing in the world to do is take that shaft off, and tip it about a half inch at the bottom, so that you bring the bend down closer to the head and you reduce the angle. You move the shaft axis back in the heel, and you can take a face balance putter and get 20 degrees of toe hang with it.
Huh.
And
yeah.
And I know Cameron's done it. I know one specific one that he took. The guys on the tour before they were building the ones with mouths with the toe hang, they would take one and they cut it long and then tip it from the bottom and get a little bit of toe hang going and just free up that toe a little bit to keep the player from getting shut to open. Is basically what they're doing. They're trying to get that toe to move a little faster so you don't rotate shut taking it back.
Yeah.
The miss that you'll see most often on the tour when you're watching on TV is the player that takes it back straight and shut or outside and rotates it shut, and then has to reverse the rotation coming back to the ball, and he block cuts it up to the hole and it ends up short right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see it all the time, and especially under pressure. And it's a visual thing where you're trying to take it straight back, and it's just you don't follow your arc. And so
you mean on shorter putts then primarily?
Mostly on shorter putts, but almost any putt, and under pressure more so. Then I think the first time I saw the mallet with the toe hang, obviously was the Spider, the TaylorMade Spider.
Yeah.
And those guys put that short slant neck on and that was a visual. They told me that was a visual thing, that they were looking for that more direct connection and a little bit of offset, and didn't want the bended look. A lot of guys, that S curve down there will confuse you, and it doesn't look right. And so a more direct line to the putter's player preference for a lot of players. So when they did that, they got a little toe hang on it. Well, didn't get a lot of acceptance early on until then Jason Day figured out, hey, this thing's working for me. And now shoot, everybody, right?
Or at least everybody puts it in play
they got
once
more
in a
arc in their stroke than they thought.
Yeah, he makes it work pretty good.
So it's as far as single bend and double bend, it's how many layers can the player handle or does want to handle. If he's looking for a more simple look, then you're looking for a way to get the single bend shaft in it. And again, it depends on the putter, the manufacturer. Did they bore a hole in the putter and fit it that way, or did they build a stub and glue it to the stub? And obviously, if you're trying to change loft and lie, you're looking for one that was bent to it or attached to a stub. If you're looking for really a more stable feel, believe it or not, the bore through will give you a better feel. Yeah. But you don't have I'm sure you've tried to bend a double bend.
Not fun.
It's not fun, right? And so if I'm and I wouldn't recommend this, but if it's a 72 lie angle and you want to be 68, bending the double bend to 68 is almost always a disaster because it changes the face balance and it twists as you try and bend it. So you're always better off just moving to a different type of hosel.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of bending many things more than 2 degrees in terms of putters. So that's a way bigger story. But
they were built the way they were built, and if you need a flatter lie, then you need to talk to somebody about getting something that's flatter lie. Now, flow necks, it's easy to bend a flow neck flatter. It's easy to bend a heel shafted putter flatter. And some of the custom guys will use a round pipe, and it'll just be a round neck at a specific length. And I like that because that gives me all the flexibility in the world. I can build any putter that anybody needs in this world with a round pipe neck and the ability to weld it.
Yeah.
And it's very specific.
Once we've gotten through this in about 40 minutes, that's all. Even though we've sort of, I would say, touched each one just a little bit, it's still pretty deep. I'll bet a few people are saying, right?
Yeah, well,
but that's okay because there's more to it than it's just a hustle.
Think about this. When I started 10, 11 years ago, and I wasn't first by a long shot, but when I was introduced to Putt Lab and started to look at it and started to think about how it related to putter design, there was very few options out there. Ping was the only one that would give you a lot. You had too many options. And look how we have evolved to the point where now the manufacturers are working with fitting systems that have multiple necks and multiple heads, and you can get whatever you want. And what I say is you can get whatever you need. But it takes a little knowledge. You can't go in there and say, I like the looks of that, because that might not work for you. So it takes a little knowledge or a little understanding when you're going to make that purchase. And putters are more expensive. So I would think you'd want to know as much as you can about, just for the fun of it, number one, but just for the value of it, number two, of going in and saying, hey, this is what I think I want or need. And then guys, the fitter people in your audience that to be able to provide that service, and just say, no, it's way beyond length and lie anymore.
Yeah.
And for what we know, and that all comes from the ability to measure it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Before we could measure it, who knew? But once you start to measure it, and once you start to see things, and you can see how you can influence something a little bit, the hardest thing in putting is to move it a half a degree. But that's critical of burning an edge, hence the name of my company, burning an edge and making one.
Is that where that's
half
from?
A degree? Yeah. Friend of mine, senior tour player years ago. He's from Toledo, Ohio, and I was working for Arnold at the time, and I'd come back home and I saw him, asked him how he's doing, and how I'd seen he'd made a little money, and congratulated him on his success. And Bruce, I'm giving it up. What? What for? And he says, I have burnt so many edges I can't take it anymore. It's making me a basket case. And so the burnt edges part of it stuck with me forever. So that burnt edges name is in honor of that player, and that that's what we're looking for. I can get you to the any good instructor can get you to the edge of the hole on a pretty regular basis. He can help you with the mechanics of your stroke, and he can get you to get close. But I believe, as much as I believe anything in this game, I believe that last half degree to get you inside the hole is the feedback from the putter and how you swing it. And so if you're missing it by 3 feet, you don't need to spend a lot of money in a fit. You can get pretty much a straightforward fit and you can get closer. But if you're trying to make it, if you're the kid that's trying to make it on the I apologize, the web.com, the corn tour.
Yeah.
If you're that guy and you need to make 50% from 15 feet to stay in the game, then you better think about everything instead of just something. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to show them what happens when you change putters.
Now, how about, so let's talk about the 10 to 15 handicap guy too. I mean, obviously he wants to make more putts, but what's the little differentiation for them there to be a bit better, right?
Yeah, just it starts. How big is the arc? Well, how far do you stand from the ball? How big is the arc? And then the next step is, how are you going to move? Are you going to be a dominant hand player? Are you going to be a lead hand player? Are you going to be a shoulder? Are you feel better, more connected with a shoulder core rotation? Do you have a combination? What is that going to be? And then what does that produce when I add all that up? Because what we want you to do is not worry about finding what's best. We want you to make a decision so that you're more consistent. So then now we can talk about fitting a putter to a consistent motion. And that's where the line manipulating the manipulation comes from.
Yeah.
Is because that's what happens, right? I'm trying to make the putter do something. I'm manipulating how I swing it. Well, then the miss factor comes in. I make or miss. So now I start to manipulate the first manipulation to make sure that I get it online. And then the whole thing, I lose the feel for speed. So what we're asking you to do is tell us how you want to do it. Let us get the right size tire on this car. And then you go ahead and you move, and then tell me where it's going, and we'll make the adjustments. So then the final stage where we're working at now would be to add the weight component to what you've decided from hosel location, how that hosel connects the putter, all those things to match that up. And you've seen it. We think, if you go, there's a width of an angle of about 12 to 14 degrees that we've seen from vertical to how far they are from the ball that are basically been successful.
Yeah.
And so that's going to have what's your body trying to do? How big of an arc is it trying to swing it? If I build a robot that's set up just like you, how would that robot move? How would that robot move that putter? And it's going to have and it's going to be one of the 9 profiles. And then we know how to match putters to the profiles based on the player feedback.
Yeah.
And it takes some time, and it's complicated, and it's for my online customers, they'll all tell you that they hated my guts the first week and they're frustrated as heck, but eventually it starts to click and they start to understand it. And then there's no reason to scare off the 10 or 15 handicapper. If you're a 10 or 15 handicapper and you play regularly, I doubt very seriously you want to stay at 15. That's why you talk to guys like you. Is there better equipment for me, Tony?
Yeah.
Talk to guys that instruction side, or they talk to guys like me that do a little bit of all of it. Is there a better way? Is there a better way for me to approach this? Yeah, probably is. Probably is. And nobody ever wants to blame the fit on a miss, especially in putting. Man,
well,
I'm gonna tell you
that means you made a bad decision, right?
Right. Right. And I get a lot of kids, competitive kids, that come to me the day before a tournament. And they'll go, well, I said, when do we play next? Well, tomorrow. Oh, well, and we don't want to make too many changes, right? So what we'll do is we'll take whatever putter they've got and we'll make a slight posture, connection change in the stroke, mechanical change in the stroke that they can do before they swing. And basically I call it loosening and tightening the bolts. And like a recent example is a young lady that came to see me, left hand low with an incredibly heavy putter, and she loved the weight and she could handle the speed and everything was good, but the tendency was for the putter to swing away from her a little bit. So all we did is said, well, this putter is going to work better if we can move this path to the right. So why don't we connect your right elbow to your rib cage and swing the putter the same way but with that elbow connected? And she won the event. and it was like a light going off. You could see it, and that works too. And so now we reverse engineered it. We've taken the preference that a player has, and we built the stroke based on his preference. And a lot of times that ends up being the putter. So a guy comes to me with a Cameron 009 that he spent $5,000 for on eBay. Bruce, I got to learn how to use this putter. Oh, okay. Here's what we'll do. And then they tell me if they can do it or not.
Yeah.
And, and if they can't, then we discuss the options. Or they go find somebody that's going to, tell them what they want to hear. But call me back when you're sick of missing it left. And, it's just not being smart, just that we know where it's going.
Yeah.
And, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. And we're not trying to, how fitters and golf pros are. We're pretty territorial. So we're not trying to interfere with what anybody else is saying. We're just saying, hey, we got some answers to problems that come up.
Yeah.
And whoever it is, you or Craig, Isabel, and the fellow that you had on last week, who, by the way, if you haven't listened to last week's podcast, you want to listen to it, because I'm trying to figure it out just like everybody else, and making that transition, and that conversation you guys were having. I was shocked that it didn't last any longer, because you guys could have gone deep on that one.
Yeah, we could. That's I love that stuff. In fact, I'm hoping one of my secret weapons for returning to golf is using what I already know there from going through the certification with Stephen. Because when I've applied that, it works. It's just a matter of doing it. Yeah.
It keeps you from reacting while you're in motion. That's what I tell Craig.
Yeah.
That you're going to miss a putt because you react to something in motion. That's why I'm adamant about getting the fit right, because I don't want the putter to influence you as you're moving. So our discussion about hosels is critical, because I need that attachment to be non-influential. Okay?
Yeah.
If your body's trying to move one direction and the putter's designed to swing in another direction, you will never be in the subconscious mode of putting, because you're always going to have to fix it. And so that's what Craig and I talk about all the time is, okay, Parts, this is the problem I got. How are you going to fix it?
Yeah.
And putting, just to throw it out there, what we're finding, what I'm picking on him about, is when do I transition from decision making to subconscious mode, and how do I do that? And I think Craig's got some answers, and I think Mr. Yellen's got some answers. They've got the ability to do that. I don't think it's what happened early on when we started talking about the mental side is we thought the entire process was you play the whole game and subconsciously. You can't, because you have to decide what club you're going to hit and how far you're going to hit it, and you have to decide how the putt's going to break and how fast it is, and you got to think. Arnold always said, it's not that you think too much that causes the problem in your game. It's that you don't think about the right thing. Yeah. So my job as the mechanic is to get you to think about the right things. And Craig's job on the mental side, and what your job will be as you get into it, is how do I transition from that into just allowing it to happen? And it's going to make the difference. There's going to be a lot of professional and college wannabe players that's going to make the big difference.
And it doesn't have to be a huge difference for a lot of them. It just could be, think one or two strokes.
Right.
That's right.
Well, that's just it. Somebody asked me the other day, I constantly get asked, Bruce, you ever going to write a book? I said, I can't. It'll make Dave Pell's look like a Clip Notes. And so, because I get into putter design, but one of the things that it's the 1 degree. It's that half degree that we're trying to find. That's the difference. And so if I'm in the conscious mode when I'm hitting a putt and I'm reacting to something that I feel in the stroke, which is at the worst is the yips and at the least is a flinch, well, that's going to make it difficult for me to predict where this ball's going to go, because I've never met anyone that really has complete control over an adjustment while it's in motion.
Yeah.
And so, you can practice till your brains fry, but you still come up with the miss. And so the guys that have the more natural rotation are less they're less likely to be the guy who made 1,000 in a row and then missed the first one when I got on the golf course. And so, just another way of looking at it. I wouldn't argue with anybody that told me, repetitive practice and all that. Yeah, that's the way you should do it. I don't see it. And I want that movement to be natural, and I want it to be field based. And in order for it to be field based, we've got to spend some time making the decisions about Hosel and shaft flex and all that stuff. So
yeah. Well, we're going to end it here. We could do another 50 minutes, couldn't we, Bruce?
I was going to say 40 minutes. That's my record.
Oh, no, 54.
Oh, wow. See, I knew I'd stretch it out.
That's okay, though. There's lots of great stuff. I'm going to put a link to Burnt Edges in the notes. I love listening to any of the ones you do with anyone else too. The one with the Plugged In Golf Guys was one of my favorites.
Well, Matt and I had known each other for a long time, and I had worked with Matt a little bit early on, and that was a lot of fun. And a good guy, and they're doing some good stuff. And I like what you guys are doing, the way you present the information. It's not marketing based. I'm not trying to sell anybody anything. Here it is. This is what it is. I think I certainly appreciate what you're doing. And so that anytime I can be on, if I can add to it, it just makes me feel good that I'm on the right track.
Good way to end. Well, Bruce, thanks. Hang in for a second. And
thanks, Bart. Yep.
And we appreciate it.
Oh, anytime. Thanks.
Okay.
Game Improvement Golf. I create exceptional golf clubs. You shoot lower scores.
Bruce, thanks for this fascinating interview. Finding out about how Hosel design can influence your putting performance is something well worth doing, and I hope all of you listening learned something about that today. I put a web link in the show notes to Bruce at Burnt Edges Consulting, to where he does his blog posts, and also a link to his Facebook page. I also put a link in the show notes to the Toulon Golf Hosel Design Guide webpage, one of the best links I've been able to find that shows all the different types of putter Hosel designs. Finally, my shout out for today is a repeat shout out to a good friend, Roy Nix, founder of the Association of Golf Club Fitting Professionals, the AGCP. Roy has spent many, many hours creating a new website for the AGCP, and it's now available for viewing and learning from. I put a link in the shout out to the new webpage. Well, that's it for today. In 2 weeks, I'm working on setting up the next interview. But thanks again to all of you who continue to listen to and enjoy these podcasts. See you soon.
Game Improvement Golf, your source of information and inspiration to become an exceptional golfer now. www.gameimprovementgolf.com